Okay, our presentation today is about oil fracking. My name is Rafael Cañas, first year in technology school.
I'm Teresa Bice.
Danielle Howery. Mike Joya. Okay, I'm going to be talking about hydraulic fracturing. It's most commonly known as fracking. You know, the title of our presentation is not my fracking problem. I hope I'm pronouncing it correct. Fracking has proven itself to be very helpful in alleviate some dependency and importation of foreign oil. Until recently, pockets of natural gas have been laying approximately about 1.5 miles below the surface of the earth. Fracturing allows us to recover this resource and bring our relief to the ever-growing energy crisis facing the U.S. So, how does the process begins? What is fracking? So this is the technical definition of fracking. It's basically how do we get the oil out of the ground. So how the process begins is by drilling a borehole into the earth, approximately going 1.5 miles below the surface, and it's about 7,700 feet below the surface. Just to visualize this extreme deep, imagine yourself that you are at the top of the Sears Towers. It's now known as Willis Towers in Chicago. That's about 1,200 feet. Now imagine yourself 5 times stacking 5 Sears Towers on top of each other. And then you look up on the observation desk, and then you look downward. That's pretty deep. That's how deep are they going here. Here's the ground level. They go on 7,700 feet down below. And then they turn horizontally, and what they do is that they create fractures here. See those? And then once they're done with that, this is the key process. How do they take out the gas and the oil? How do they extract that? They mix water and sand, about 99%, and 1% is only additives. This right here is the sand. It's a special type of sand that they use to extract the oil and gas. The 1% that they mix it with is water and sand mixed is combined with a very small portion of chemicals, and that could be laundry detergents, acrylic fiber, plastic, cosmetic, and food beverages. Okay, are we playing? Is that the video? Yeah. We're playing a video now, and this is about 2 minutes.
Fracking is a form of natural gas drilling, an alternative to oil, because the oil kept spilling, bringing jobs to small towns, so everybody's reeling. People turn on the lights and the drill is making killing.
Water goes into the pipe into the ground. The pressure cranks fish 7,000 feet down. The cracks release the gas that powers your town. That well's fracked, yeah, totally fracked.
But there's more in the water than just H2O. Toxic chemicals help to make the fluid flow. With names like benzene and formaldehyde, you better keep it far away from the water supply.
The drillers say the fishes are a mile below. The groundwater pumped into American homes, but don't tell it to the residents of Subway. That water's fracked. We're talking benzene.
What the fuck is going on with all this fracking going on? I think we need some facts to come to light. I know we want energy, but nothing ever
speak about the history and the development of fracking. It was first actually used in the 1860s with a formula of nitro, actually, and in the 1930s, different techniques were developed involving acid. In the 1940s, Floyd Harris from the Standalone Oil researched all the previous methods, and between his research and in 1948, J.B. Clark, who also worked for the Standalone Oil, they wrote an industrial paper about fracking, and this resulted in a patent in 1949, and this gave exclusive rights for fracking for the Halliburton Oil Well Cementing Company. Basically in 1949, because of this patent, they were the ones drilling they were treating 332 of the wells in 1949, and each one of these wells increased the production 75%. In 1950, there were over 3,000 wells that they did the same process with. And between that time and 2008, more than 2.5 million treatments had been performed worldwide. By 2008, 50,000 of the fracking stages were estimated to be completed globally, not just treated. And back in the 50s, sorry, let me retrack a little bit, there were different chemicals used, that some of them were used for the same process that plastic explosives was used. And they used different types of chemicals. One process added potassium chloride to stabilize the clay, because once they would break apart the ground, it just became unstable and unsafe for the workers to be working around. Then they developed gel stabilizers, which were developed for the wells that had the higher temperature. And I'm going to turn it over to Danelle.
So in 2004, there was a safety study done by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And in this study, the EPA said, okay, well, oil fracking poses only a minimal threat to the underground drinking water. Now, there was a lot of issues with this study because they focused only on the injection of the chemicals at the site. They didn't take into effect any of the after effects of the chemical staying in the ground. They didn't take into effect any disposal methods. They only focused on one aspect of oil fracking. So there was a lot of uproar about the study. They felt that it wasn't done correctly. Nevertheless, because of this study, oil fracking was deemed to be exempt from the regulation of the Safe Water Drinking Act, which meant that there was pretty much no governmental regulation on what they were doing. Now, the reason why this is such a big deal is because 10 out of 11 CBMs are coal bed methanes deposits. This is where the oil fracking usually occurs. Well, 10 out of 11, or roughly 91% of those, are located near U.S. DW's underwater sources of drinking water. So if the oil fracking industry or the gas and oil industry is exempt from regulation under the Safe Water Drinking Act, yet 91% of their business is located within underground sources of drinking water, you can see where that would pose a problem. During the oil fracturing process, 85% of the fracturing fluids remain underground in or near these underground sources of drinking water. So these are just some of the myriad environmental concerns associated with this. Another one of the things is the documented decrease in air quality around gas and oil wells. A lot of residents complain of horrible smells. There's been instances where people said they could not even leave their house because of the smell. There's been instances of thin films covering windows and cars and vehicles. There's been ash and deposits raining down from the sky. So there are a lot of health concerns. There's a lot of quality of life concerns. There's just a lot of environmental concerns, period, associated with oil fracking. Right.
With this, we are seeing a lot of actually foreign investments coming to the U.S. for this process, and that's mainly because, as an example, the Marcellus formation actually runs from upstate New York all the way to Tennessee. So China actually bought out a Canadian company for $2.1 billion for to take over the area that they're fracking in Canada. And then the UK has purchased, an oil company in the UK has purchased actually a company that makes the fracking equipment for almost $1 billion. Now, with the reasoning of the federal government saying that this doesn't follow the Safe Water Drinking Act, they have now pushed any regulation of fracking onto the state governments for them to take charge of. You run into problems because a lot of state governments allow their smaller governments, municipalities, the cities, to actually do a lot of the regulations, especially for the environment. With this, though, this mix, you have to take in consideration how well fracking is going to help out the area as opposed to the state coming in and doing the regulations, and there could be lapse into how well they do it, if they protect the environment or if they don't. A lot of these areas, like the Marcellus formation, I know it's economically depressed. I grew up in upstate New York. It's a very poor area. It's New York State. All the rich people live in the city. All the poor people live in the rest of the huge state that exists. There's not a lot of jobs. And you can see the toss-up the states are having. 1 acre of land that you were to lease to an oil company can generate $180,000 of royalty a year. Okay, that's just not total, that's a year. You add in two acres, now you double that, plus there's signing bonuses to do that. So if you're in a farmland and you have lots of acres, you can make tremendous amount of money from that. And then also the state governments make a lot of money by doing it on state parks, state land that's not owned privately. So you can see a lot of the conflict state governments have about over-regulating it or not regulating it at all. That's some of the gains. Some of the negative aspects we see, especially in the economic costs. Socioeconomical division may increase, and this is a concern because if a farmer sells or leases all his land, say he has maybe 50 acres, he's making a lot of money. Fracking turns out maybe not to be great for the area. He can just move away. He can keep leasing that land. He can buy land somewhere else. Now the person who maybe works the land or has a job in the city nearby can't leave because they're not making that money. They're not receiving those royalties. Because we're not sure exactly what fracking will do to everything, especially the land. Positive, negative, it could turn negative, so it'd be hard to sell the land, or it decreases the land value. Everyone knows if someone forecloses on a home right next door, your house value plummets, right? Kind of the same concept on your land value. Contamination, if that does come to light, is a concern. Again, it affects everything in the area. Another thing that they talked about was if the farmer's making all this money by not doing anything, human nature would be not to keep farming and just earn off the royalties. You can just sit there, and because you own this piece of land, you're making money. And I thought it was interesting, if they let the land go feral and don't farm it, it actually hurts the environment more because it changes the landscape. It'll affect how the winds blow, how the habitat occurs in that area.
Okay, so there are benefits to oil fracking, of course. One of the greatest benefits would be a reduction in the U.S. dependence upon foreign oil. The oil fracking process, I believe it said that it reduced our dependence on oil by 43% in the last couple of years. So, I mean, it's understandable why we would want to do that. It's also helped to eliminate the downturn in certain poverty-stricken areas. In the Delaware River Basin, there's actually a housing crunch now because there's so much oil fracking going in that people are just moving into the area. Well, housing values have literally quadrupled. Motels and hotels are completely full. People who are renting their houses at $300 a month, are now renting them at $1,200, $1,500, $1,600 a month because all the people flooding in. So there are definitely some economic benefits to going into oil fracking. At the same time, however, the Delaware River Basin Committee, which is in charge of this, it's like a valley located in a four-state group. It's being sued by the New York State Attorney General for negligence because when they agreed to allow the oil fracking to come in, they didn't really do a lot of safety tests. They just said, okay, well, this is what the oil industry said. We're going to go ahead and take their word for it. So they're being sued by the New York State Attorney General because he says that in essence they've turned the people who live in that river valley, that river basin, into test subjects. The committee's reasoning was, well, hey, we're only going to let them drill a couple of hundred wells, and if we don't like the environmental impact, then we can just shut it down. But what does that happen? What does that mean to the people who've already been affected by this? So there are upsides, there's downsides. There's a lot of public scrutiny going on concerning this issue because we don't know if it's a right or wrong answer at this point. It's just there's a lot of information. So, conclusion. Okay, so I just feel like I can understand why oil fracking would be a big thing. Like I said, the biggest thing would be the reduction upon foreign oil. Our country definitely needs to be able to be more dependent upon itself, and the reduction on foreign oil would really solve a lot of political issues. At the same time, I feel like maybe we should just give it a couple of years. Technology in this country increases at an amazing rate, and something that's unsafe today may be completely safe by tomorrow or next week or next month. So I say, hey, that oil, that gas is not going anywhere. It's underground. It's been there for 1,000 years. It'll stay there for now another 1,000 more. Let's just take the time to perfect the process. Try to remove as much of the insecurities from the public as we can, and then go after it instead of trying to rush the process and make a quick buck now. I just think that it will benefit us more in the long term to just take our time and fill the process out a little more completely.
From my conclusion, just doing this paper, kind of along the same lines as him, give it some time. I think there needs to be more research done in exactly what the effects are that they're currently using, the chemicals that they're using to do the process. One needs to stop being proprietary and be publicly released so we know what may show up in drinking water if that's a problem. But with that, with the advancements and how fast technology moves, I think that we can move to a process where it can be done safely to harness that energy, and hopefully some economically depressed areas can reap the benefits for that.
How many of you have actually heard of fracking before tonight? I hadn't, before I started doing my research, heard anything about it, really. I knew that we harvested the oil, but I really didn't know anything about the methods of it. To me, it's America's little unspoken secret. I mean, they really have hidden the details of it from public scrutiny, a lot of it. But realistically, would knowing solve the deeper issue of the fact that we need the oil? I mean, one way or the other, unless something changed so that we are more energy efficient, that we're using more sustainable methods, we still need that oil to get to work. We need to have ways of doing that, and if we're relying too heavily on international global sources, then we're depriving our own nation. So, I mean, you got both hands, and I mean, one way or the other, the base problem would need to be fixed. We would need to be more sustainable in order to fix the symptom.
Just like Teresa, I'm on the same page with her. I agree that we need the oil now. When it start digging now, getting that oil, because we are dependent too much on the oil that comes from Venezuela. I mean, this Chavez is telling us that, it's pretty much is threatening us. If we don't do certain type of things, then he'll, he pretty much is got us by the neck. But I agree that there are some safety issues there with the water, with drinking water, just like Mike was saying. But these companies are digging pretty deep down the ground, so I think we'll be fine. And it's also it turns into a political issue too, depending on which party wins this time. That's how they're gonna play it out. So, thank you.
Any questions? Oh, yes.
So we have something underneath the area here called the Mahomet Tees Aquifer that gets all of our fresh drinking water. It's this huge underground river. How would each of you feel if they were fracking around here?
Well, like I said, I would hope that they test extensively and keep testing. I spent a couple years up in Massachusetts in the Woburn area, and there's a movie about how a company there was dumping wastewater that ended up into the drinking water and caused large amounts of cancer for that area. I don't think I'd be that comfortable with it right now, just with the fact that the chemicals are we don't know exactly what chemicals they do use. 1% sounds not like a whole lot, but again, it's all relative in perspective. Just like the presentation we had by the professor, 1% is actually like 25 or 250,000 gallons of those chemicals. It's a lot actually, because they use a lot of water and sand also. It's a big area.
When I was younger, I grew up in the country, Hopkins Park, east of Kankakee County, and we actually had a well. And as a kid, we'd go out there and we'd pump the handle and we'd bring the water up and we'd drink it and we'd run around and play. We'd get thirsty and we'd go back to it again. So as an adult, I think I would be pretty bothered at the thought of maybe this process going on near the underground drinking source, because I can remember pulling water up from that well, and how would I be living right now if I've been drinking contaminated water? Would I be alive? Would I be having whatever health problems? I don't know. So I just feel like until we can work on this process a little more, until we can perfect it, I would just prefer not to be anywhere near it.
Other questions? Yes.
I would just like to make an observation. First of all, I wanted to thank you guys for really, taking the veil off this topic and really getting some of these underlying issues out. But overall, I think, I want to know what you guys think too, is that you think that this is being done just because there's money to being made. I don't really agree with your stance on it, Raphael, just because of like what Mark said. I would not want that, especially what my children are drinking out of, because the research has not been extensively done. And I really don't think it's going to, I'm all for reducing the dependency on foreign oil, but what I'm seeing here is a lot of foreign companies are investing in this. So they're the ones that may be benefiting, getting the oil and selling it back to us. So they're coming on our land, buying these companies that supply these materials. And so really we're not really, we still have that foreign dependency in some way, shape, or form. Foreign companies are going to still make some money. So I guess my question is, do you think this is really being done just because of the fact that it's available and there's a lot of money to be made, or should a lot of this technology and money be used for using technology to make us less reliable on fossil fuels?
Well, I think it's all about the money. I mean, look what happened back in 2001. Why did we go to Iraq and Afghanistan? how much oil is over there, you know. That's the main reason we 10 years of war, you know. If we would have started this process earlier, then how many lives, you know, have we lost? And just to go back to the first question, I think, Mark, you were saying that how do we feel if they start doing fracking over here? And I just go back, I'll turn the question to you. You know, when you go into a gas station, you pump gasoline in your car, you want 100% gasoline, right? No water, no nothing, just 100%. But then what we're eating, you know, we turn around and go to McDonald's, or we go to Hardee's, and we go to Culver's or whatever. You know, we don't know what we're putting into. So we are treating our cars, you know, better than what we're treating ourselves. So. Thanks.
Any other questions? You were going to say something?
No.
Okay. Any other questions?
If anybody wants to see and take notes, I got the PowerPoint. I'll just pass it around.
Okay, would you please join with me in a round of applause for them?
They're all out of the ground. So how the process begins is by drilling a borehole into the earth, approximately going 1.5 miles below the surface, and it's about 7,700 feet below the surface. Just to visualize this extreme deep, imagine yourself that you are at the top of the Sears Towers. It's now known as Willis Towers in Chicago. That's about 1,200 feet. Now imagine yourself 5 times stacking 5 Sears Towers on top of each other. And then you look up on the observation desk, and then you look downward. Okay, our presentation today is about oil fracking. My name is Rafael Cañas, first year in technology school.
I'm Teresa Bice.
Danielle Howery.
Mike Joya.
Okay, we're going to be talking about hydraulic fracturing. It's most commonly known as fracking. You know, the title of our presentation is not my fracking problem. I hope I'm pronouncing it correct. Fracking has proven itself to be very helpful in alleviating some dependency and importation of foreign oil. Until recently, pockets of natural gas have been laying approximately about 1.5 miles below the surface of the earth. Fracturing allows us to recover this resource and bring a relief to the ever-growing energy crisis facing the U.S. So, how does the process begins? What is fracking? So this is the technical definition of fracking. It's basically how do we get oil and gas. The 1% that they mix it with is water and sand mixed is combined with a very small portion of chemicals, and that could be laundry detergents, acrylic fiber, plastic, cosmetic, and food beverages. Okay, are we playing? Is that the video? Yeah, we're playing a video now, and this is about 2 minutes.
Fracking is a form of natural gas drilling, an alternative to oil, cause the oil kept spilling, bringing jobs to small towns, so everybody's reeling. People turn on the lights and the drillers make a killing.
Water goes into the pipe into the ground.
That's pretty deep. That's how deep are they going here. Here's the ground level. They go on 7,700 feet down below. And then they turn horizontally, and what they do is that they create fractures here. See those? And then once they're done with that, this is the key process. How do they take out the gas and the oil? How do they extract that? They mix water and sand, about 99%, and 1% is only additives. This right here is the sand, it's a special type of sand that they use to extract